Hello, this is Chala, Dincoy, CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert. We are here today with Angela Proffitt for the Polish My Pitch Deep Dive. Welcome back, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so tell us what you do again for the people who have not seen the first episode. Give us an idea.
Yeah. So we help entrepreneurs that constantly feel the distractions and want to get clear on how to spend their time in their business. And my company is called GSD Creative. That stands for Get Shit Done. And so I have 20 years in the hospitality and luxury market. And we specifically, first and foremost, help hospitality and the industry make sure they are the most productive with their people, paperless processes, their productivity, and the bottom line, which is profit.
Awesome. That is so awesome. So what is the biggest mistake you see your target audience making?
The biggest mistake that I see the audience making is they want everything right now. They want everything fast and they don't slow down. And so, me included, many years ago, before I surrounded myself with the right people and the right mentors, I was the same way. So, I totally get it where people are coming from. But what I had to take a step back and realize, which is now what I'm helping other creative entrepreneurs understand, is you've got to slow down. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have a strategy. You have to test it. Just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean it's actually going to work and it's a good idea. And so we really, really have enjoyed teaching people to take a step back. Let's slow down. Let's think through this before you waste a bunch of time and money and marketing dollars before you actually start to launch something. Because most of the people that we work with in our audience, they are either launching a digital event, some type of an event, or they're launching a product or a song. We do a lot of number one parties. I'm from Nashville, so naturally I work with people, it's singers. And so I'm like, well, let's slow down. What are the goals? What's the follow-up plan? That's one of the biggest mistakes I see too, is people do all these great things, but then they don't have a follow-up strategy to keep their audience engaged. So I would say that's the biggest thing, is just thinking through a plan.
That's a good one. And how have you helped them overcome this hurdle?
So how I've helped them overcome the hurdle is we have a strategy and a process that we've used and we've perfected really ever since I started my first business 2 decades ago. I grew up in I went to college to be a nurse and then went over into psychology and mental health. And that was at the very beginning of EMR, which is electronic medical records. And I saw the power of how paperless and being paperless was going to affect not only the healthcare industry, but the world. And so when I started my first business, we were always paperless. And there's a lot of other weird things that happened to me too in there. My computer crashed in college and all kinds of weird things. It was like God was sending me all these signs of like, you need to be this tech geek and learn how to be paperless because it's going to be powerful. And so really making sure that a system is in place, number one, being paperless, being in the cloud, making sure it's backed up, making sure you have a naming mechanism so that you and your team and your clients feel very secure. Because a lot of us, and me included, we live that life of, oh, my place will never burn down. My office will never flood. These things will never happen to me, but they've all happened to me. I've been a part of all of these things. And thankfully, by us being proactive and having a strategy and a process in place, it's the same for every client, but what is inside of that strategy and process of everything that's in the cloud is completely custom to that client's goals. But you got to have a strategy and a process internally before you can actually help people externally.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, a nurse to this, how did that happen?
It's crazy. It's like, I grew up, my parents were very traditional and I was a competitive gymnast and that was my life for a long time. And I knew I loved to help people. And so, you know, when you're 17 and everyone's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, I guess a nurse. Like, that sounds good. I love people. And then I started to do my clinical rotations, and I actually worked at a morgue. I didn't know it was with dead people. In my defense, a girl that I did gymnastics with worked there, and she's like, you'll learn so much being in nursing school. And I show up and I'm like, it's with dead people? Like, I had no idea. But I learned a lot. I was really good at anatomy. But what I learned is that I hate inflicting pain on people. And so when I went to give a shot to a patient, I'm like, I can't do this. And so I changed my major to psychology and ended up working in mental health and working in the AIDS clinic as a therapist. And I loved the therapy of it, but it was very dark and depressing. And my family owned a wedding venue for 35 years on the Gulf Coast. And I grew up around it, but I never thought I would like be in that industry. And so when my parents' friends' kids started to get married, they knew me and my sister knew how to decorate and like make things pretty. And so we just did it for fun. And I did that for almost 10 years. I stayed in healthcare. And then finally, we started to book so many weddings that I hired an accountant, I hired a business manager, and then I had 12 people working with me at the time. And then I was still doing this hospital thing. It was very flexible. I will say that. I wasn't like in the operating room all the time. I ended up recruiting physicians for a few years. And then finally, the wedding thing just built up so much. I really had to make a choice. Like, how am I going to do you? Once I learned to focus on one thing, which was just running a business and then learning how to actually run a business, is really where life started to take off. But everything happens for a reason, and everything grew just by having a great network of people. I mean, my first clients were doctors and their kids were getting married. And so, you know, that it was great working at the hospital and building relationships with these subspecialists, because I ended up, you know, really helping them in multiple ways. And so it's just like one thing led to another. And then I started to focus on luxury weddings. I was filming a television show with Kelly Pickler, who was getting married at the time. She'd just come off of American Idol. And she's like, I want to get married on a private island. And I'm like, what's that? I didn't grow up like that. And so I'm like, that exists. And so a month later, we're on a private island, and I got to know that way of life. And while it sounds very amazing, you have to really learn to think ahead to get everything to the island. There is no Amazon Prime, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Joann's, Walmart, Target. Like, you really have to think ahead, people. But when I was on that island, I saw it sparked something in me that I knew that I could be an entrepreneur. I knew that I could help some of these islands really understand luxury and how to treat people on a luxury level for a wedding, because a wedding's different. It's very emotional. And so that's when I started traveling to all these little islands and helping a lot of these resorts and brands understand how to market and how to do luxury weddings. And then I started to bring in my psychology and all my experience in doing weddings for fun, like at local churches. But what I learned is that people on the islands, they're like, how are you so happy? Like, you're not a normal planner. Like, planners are like bossy bitches. And I'm like, oh no, I like to have fun. But at the same time, like, we have a strategy and we have a timeline and it works. And so if you follow it and you're a good communicator, then the end goal should be happiness, right? Like, that really does exist.
For every.
Yeah, it really does. And then in 2010, our town flooded, like venues underwater. That weekend, we had 8 displaced weddings. It was a complete nightmare. But that's what sparked the whole productivity paperless thing, because a lot of our vendors and our creative partners, they would have a notebook for every single event. And guess what? It all floated away. And so it took a tragedy for them to actually start to listen to me, to say, hey, don't do that. Like, let me show you what Dropbox is. Let me show you what the cloud means. And so that's when, again, through word of mouth, it started to take off. And that's how the productivity company was born. It was born out of need. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm just going to, start this company today. So every little thing that I've been involved in and all the projects and opportunities, it really comes out of a need for helping people. That's the bottom line.
Well, you are so fortunate, because I have seen, unfortunately, so many businesses that were started based on the person's own need that they ran into. And then there wasn't a market need for it, or there wasn't enough of a market need for it, or the market wasn't willing to pay the amount of money that that person wanted to make. So so that's the beauty of what you're saying, is that you focused on the pain of the market, but you fell into it. What I want for the world to learn, like, you have a mission, my mission is to teach them to stop guessing it and to find it strategically, and to stop falling into it, but to actually pick it strategically based on what is the most expensive pain in the market that you can help solve, and how can you formulate your entire marketing. So even if everybody that dies, and hopefully they don't, but even if you're like dropped into a completely new country, you can find clients from scratch and quickly, because you have the strategy to figure out who and what to sell to them and how to sell it to them. So yours is a great success story, and I'm so happy for you, from going from a morgue to a
right
to a multi-million plus 7-figure business. So congratulations. All right. So tell me, that was your success story, but let's talk about a client success story that you've helped.
Oh gosh. Well, most recently, because of COVID and the year that we're in, we had to shift some things. And I would say our biggest success story for this year is with a corporate client. It is, I'm not sure if you've heard of the keto diet. It's all very controversial.
Yeah, of course.
We have a client that is a physician, again, going back to my healthcare days, but him and his wife specifically focus on keto. And there was going to be a very large in-person conference, 500 plus people who are keto ambassadors and people who really think that keto is the key to becoming more healthy. And there's a lot of health benefits. And oh my gosh, like I have edited thousands of videos of people that it has absolutely changed their life. And if COVID had not happened, we would have had probably the chance to plan a really cool event at the Omni, have 500 people, and I'm sure it would have changed their life. But with COVID, the guy that heads it all up, he said, I want to do something different. I want to put on a digital event, and I don't know what that looks like. And I said, well, and in my defense, like we build floor plans on Oculus, which is a for 3D type events. So I'm familiar, I'm very techie. And so we had some experience with Oculus and floor plans and technology, but I've never built like an actual 3D event on a digital platform. And so I said, well, Ken, I don't know either, but I'll figure it out. And I love design. And even if it's in person or if it's on a computer, it doesn't matter. And so I said, give me a few weeks. When do you want to do it? And he's like, September 11th. And in my head, I'm like, that's 4 months away. Like, we got to sell tickets. And I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out. So it really took me and 2 other of my team members off of anything else that we were working on after we got all of our clients moved around and situated. And we dove in. I interviewed 13 different platforms, and there aren't that many in the world. And we chose 6 connects to build on. And one of the things that we were able to do, they sold 3,000 tickets.
Ooh,
and it was a 3-day, and I'm talking like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. back to back. I'm like, Ken, that's a lot of speakers. Like, that's a lot of time to keep people in front of their tech. Like, I just don't know if that's going to work. And he's like, well, we'll record everything. And I'm like, yes. And then we'll set up a sales funnel, and we'll set up a strategy with a survey, and we'll get video testimonials. And so we were able to build this massive digital event in 4.5 months. And then, but I will say for them, they already had a very large online community through YouTube and through Facebook Live and Patreon. So they already had a really good established audience that they are consistent every single week, going live every Monday night. And so as soon as their fans and their Patreon people had heard, I mean, the tickets sold out quick. We kept having to increase it more because you purchase bandwidth to be able to have so many people to stream all over the world. And that's the other thing. So many people said that sent in testimonials. They were like, if this was in Nashville, we wouldn't have been able to afford to come. And so on the bright side, COVID has allowed us to reach so many more people by having, and again, I had the know-how and I have the technology experience in digital marketing and knowing how to do some of these things. But we didn't have to run any Facebook ads or Instagram ads because their audience was already so engaged. But then again, the back end part of editing all the videos, what platform are we going to put them on? How are we going to sell them? And so because we do that in our own company, we were able to help out that whole keto community and really reach so many people. And the videos are still selling. So, with New Year's around the corner, or whenever you're listening to this, typically in January, people want to lose weight. They want to get more healthy. And so with the timing, with that live being in September, that gave us another 3 to 4 months to really get everything built out. We were able to test everything. And now, like when you go to his website, there's a call to action and they're selling. So I would say that's our biggest success story this year, just from I'm really proud of my team of how quickly we threw it together. I mean, there was a lot of strategy behind it. It wasn't thrown together overnight. I mean, it was a full-time focus for a good 4 months for my team. And we plan to continue to do a few a year. So it created a whole nother revenue stream that if you would have asked me last January, Ange, would you ever do a digital event? I'm like, why? Why would I need to do that? But, it's always change and pivot and opportunity.
That sounds like a real success and a COVID success story. So congratulations on that. All right.
You.
So Angela, tell people who are listening and watching how they can reach you.
Yeah. So I have my personal website, angelaproffitt.com, and 2 F's and 2 T's. And then our company website is gsdcreative.com.
Wonderful. That's pretty simple. Get shit done. Can't forget that one.
That's
Cannot
right.
forget that one. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Everyone have a great day.